is our horticulture instructor and my friend, Rachel Meriwether. She's going to talk to us about how to make things grow in the dirt.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Okay, so as advertised, today's talk is going to focus on soils in particular. I was asked to give particular information on clay soils. So what I'm going to do is give a general overview, and then we're going to focus on clay soils as much as possible. So just to jump in, there's this little rhyme that we would say in grad school, that dirt is inert and soil is alive. So please know that the biggest thing that makes soil active and healthy for your plants is not just like the physical fact that it exists, right? It is all of these organisms that live in there. The organisms you can see, like beetles, worms, and then there's the microorganisms that you can't see, which are fungi, bacteria, microinvertebrates, so all the like teeny tiny little things that are down there like eating everything and turning it from rocks or bits and pieces into things that plants can eat, right? Because plants can't themselves take apart those nutrients and take them away. The soil is all part of that, and the little microorganisms are all part of that as well, right? So just jumping into some of that I'm already mentioning, the big parts of soil are air, minerals, which is sort of rocks, and organic matter. Those are the three big things that you need in your soil. If your soil doesn't have enough air in it, then your plants can't breathe. Plants do respirate, just like a human, right? They take in CO2, they release oxygen, just like we take in oxygen and then release CO2, which is why we're all in this great symbiotic relationship. So if anybody's ever heard the thing about how you shouldn't walk on your soil after it rains, that is why, right? Because if you walk on soil that is wet, it compacts it down, it squeezes all the air out, and then you've just turned it into something that a plant no longer can truly enjoy or live in or access. So if you have soil that's been aerated and when you walk on it, when it's dry, it kind of gives under your feet a little bit, that's what soil should feel like. If you walk on soil and it doesn't give under your feet, then your soil is fairly compacted at that point, right? It needs air in it, which if anybody has ever heard that term aerating, I know we've got a couple of golf course people here, and golf courses, they're doing that constantly. Right, they are constantly like punching holes in the soil and shoving sand into it and like trying to get oxygen into there because people are walking on it all the time, right? So you got to have those things in it. Microorganisms, you can't necessarily just buy buckets of microorganisms. What you actually buy is compost teas or compost, right? So compost and compost tea is what has living organisms in it, and that's how you can re-add those things into your soil. Compost teas, I have mixed feelings about compost teas you buy off the shelf, right? Because most compost teas that are in a bottle have been pasteurized, because you can't have microorganisms in there breathing, because if they're breathing and respirating, they're adding oxygen to the bottle and it would explode on the shelf. So if it's been pasteurized and you've killed the living things in it, like, I don't know, there are still some benefits to that because there are still certain nutrients that are in there, but know that you can get some of those things from fertilizer. If you want real compost tea, you either need to get it from somebody that made it and handed it to you without a lid on it, or you need to make it yourself. And making compost tea is not as complicated as I think some people make it out to be. It is literally like making a nasty cup of tea. So if you take compost, fresh compost, and you put it in some sort of muslin bag that looks like a tea bag, and then you drop it down into water, preferably you aerate it somehow, and then you let it sit there for 48 hours, 4 days, until it starts to kind of foam on top, you've just made compost tea. And then use it immediately. You can't let it sit around because, again, those creatures will die. All those little things you can't see, those little bacterias that are good guys, all those little microorganisms, they need to go into the soil to start doing their job, right? Does that make sense? Any questions about that before I keep going? Okay, so while we're on compost and all that, let's just go ahead and discuss compost. I think compost sometimes gets overcomplicated. You can, if you're like, a college or something like that that's like experimenting with compost or doing hot composting, can make it pretty complicated. For the average homeowner and for our compost piles at the greenhouse, we do something called cold composting, which means we are composting long term, right? We are not trying to cook that in 9 days. We're not soil temping it to make sure it's heating to a certain temperature. We are essentially trying to add an even balance of green stuff or nitrogens, if you want to think of it like that, right? That's like grass clippings, fresh leaves, any of that wet stuff. Almost all of your kitchen scraps are going to go in that category. And then the browns or the carbons, which is dead leaves, dead grass, mulched up wood chips, your hair, when you cut your hair, shredded up newspapers, any of that kind of thing. You need an even balance of those, and ideally your compost pile doesn't smell. If your compost pile smells, it's either gone anaerobic, it's not got enough oxygen, it's probably too wet, so you've got too much green stuff usually, so it's like weighing the pile down, so you've got bad guy bacteria that are rotting in there as opposed to like growing and cooking. Or it smells like trash, kind of, and it's just not got the right balance. If you have too many browns, it just sits there and never cooks, right? It's like the nitrogen's the fire that's got to keep it going. So if you've got nothing but a pile of wood chips, it's not quite doing the same thing. So don't stress yourself out about making compost. Like, make a pile somewhere and just keep adding stuff to it, right? The reason we don't add oils, meats, all that kind of thing, one, those produce bacteria that can be harmful to us. So unless you are doing a hot compost pile, you're not getting it hot enough to kill the harmful bacteria. Two, it means that animals are going to come and tear up your compost pile, right? Like, you can compost meats and all kinds of stuff. You can compost essentially anything. I mean, like, hazardous waste gets composted essentially by types of mushrooms. We just don't, like, again, this is your home compost pile. Don't stress yourself out like that, right? Add all your stuff. When we do the big ones at home, we usually make a pile of browns because we always have more browns than greens. So it's like, over here I've got this pile of, actually my grounds department who is here, they maintain a huge pile of leaves. And we add green stuff to ours, and every now and then I'm like, hey, can we please have a huge pile of leaves you gathered on campus? And they come dump some brown stuff. So mostly that's what I'm doing in practicality in my life, is I'm stockpiling brown stuff. And every now and then when I've got enough green, I like half to pile of brown stuff and I stir it a little. Any questions about that? Okay, so then using compost, most of the time what we do is we start in the springtime sifting it out of the pile, right? We've got 2 bins, one we're adding to, one that's finished, and we pull that stuff out, we put it through a sifter. Everything that falls out that's small enough goes straight under the garden bed all spring and summer. Anything that doesn't sift through and still big goes back into the pile that we're still working, right? And then it just carries on. Not complicated. Again, we don't have a thermometer. We're not like weighing anything. It doesn't have to be complicated. We're not churning anything. All of it is just pretty straightforward. Nobody's stressing out about it. Yeah? Yeah.
So do you have your pile on top of a screen, or?
No. Ours is just sitting on the ground. We have big bins. If you want to go up and visit the campus greenhouses, our compost piles are behind the greenhouses. You're welcome to go take a look, or if you come to the plant sale, I'm happy to show them to you if you want to come ask me questions. The screen, we have a big table that's actually about this height, and then we have hardware cloth. You know, hardware cloth that's got those about a centimeter space. We've got hardware cloth stretched over a table, and then we just scoop whole shovelfuls onto that screen and then sort of shake it a little bit, and we'll have a tarp underneath. So then you take the table away, drag the tarp over to the garden, dump the compost onto the garden, and then put the table away when you're done using it. Yeah, so no, that's just sitting on the ground. Now if you're gonna worm compost, like our friend Rob here does, that usually has some sort of screen in the system so that as the worms are chewing and their worm castings are falling through, they're like automatically sifting down. That's kind of its own thing as opposed to a pile in your yard somewhere. Yeah. And you can maybe ask Rob some questions directly if you like, because he is the worm master. Yeah.
Yes, because of him, I started my mini worm farm.
Yeah, they're great. And worm castings, again, it seems to have a semi-fancy name, but it's worm poo. Like, that is what worm castings are, right? So you got worms, you're feeding them stuff, they poop out, and then you get this hyper-concentrated compost, right? Because that's what, in a compost pile, the things that are decomposing stuff are worms, bacteria, and fungi. Those are your 3 big ones that are in there, chewing up all the stuff and turning it back into usable product for a plant, right?
I have a question. So I hesitated to compost living here. I moved here from Texas. We didn't have bears where I lived.
Sure.
We have bears here. So do things disturb the compost pile?
Oh, yeah. But not a lot. I mean, and it depends on where you are, right? I mean, I live on Green River Road, so I live pretty remote. If I put, like leftover mashed potatoes, yeah, they might come eat the leftover mashed potatoes.
I only ever
out
have
of
done
there.
greens from whatever and
Not that.
and some leaves and okay. I bet that's the
And
only reason I
eggshells, I've never had
hesitated.
them bother that. We used to do a huge compost piles and we'd get a lot of post-consumer waste, so we'd be dumping, big 50-gallon buckets of restaurant food. And we had to like electric fence that. Because, yeah, they absolutely came for that, right? But no, average compost. Has anybody else had bears ever mess with your
Or anything else.
regular
Raccoons.
raccoons?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've never seen
Yeah.
them. I've seen everything else, but not any,
Yeah.
further out there.
Yeah, and I wouldn't, especially for a small one, as long as you're not putting anything that smells really good, like dairy products,
No, it would just be
anything
greens.
meaty, then no. I just remember mashed potato day being the day. Like they would potentially
It would be
go
that.
through the fence to get to the mashed potatoes. It was their absolute favorite. I think because it had dairy and it smelled good. It's all starchy and they knew it was there. We used to bait the electric fence. They'd lick it first without just going straight through it. So we put peanut butter on the electric fence so they'd lick it and then run off. Otherwise, they're so excited about the mashed potatoes and they hit the fence with their back and they just go straight through it. And like, anyway, a little window into dealing with bears. Yeah, question.
And the Henderson County is selling the
Oh,
composters
yeah.
again
Yeah.
for, you
Yeah,
know.
I
the
did see that, I've just
54
never used those.
And I bought them last year and the animals don't touch it.
Get it,
They're
okay.
super sturdy and reliable.
Okay,
Good to
cool,
hear.
thank you.
Yes.
Saw that too.
Yeah. Any other questions about compost? Great. We do have a couple of local companies that do some good compost and mulch. Danny's Mulch Yard. They're one of my favorites in the area in terms of like double ground hardwood, that kind of thing. Danny's Dumpsters is out of Asheville. Cason Building Supply does a pretty nice mushroom compost. If you're not doing it yourself, those are my favorite local options for that kind of thing, right? In terms of reasonable price, they deliver, they got a good product. Yeah, and the city. They do it at the transfer station. So anybody who knows where the dump is, that's kind of North Hendersonville, that's where you have to go pick it up yourself.
How do you feel about that if we don't know what's in there, as long as it's baked?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one, and you're welcome to share your same opinion. It's like,
It's slow process.
yeah,
But if you're like where I'm at, I'm on 80 acres.
Yeah.
Where it's bears and deer and turkeys and a bunch of other things. So I have to have something that is contained.
Right.
yeah.
100%.
And I mean-
And
Oh,
so-
no, I mean the
If you have strong
Quality.
opinions about organics,
Yes.
maybe that might not be what you want, because they do take all yard waste from Henderson County.
Oh,
So it could be
about-
chemical.
Yeah, so like if it's, they're getting yard waste and lawn waste and everything, and they're putting it in that compost. So if you feel really strongly about that, that might be a reason why you would not do the Hendersonville one. I have never heard anybody say verbally that they've gotten compost from there that had like forever chemicals in it that burn their yard. So I am more likely to hear that, I feel like, from consumers or like see it when people get straw bales. Because straw has a lot of chemicals put on it, and so you can sometimes take those straw bales and put it on your lawn or whatever you might be using it for, and then that'll have chemicals in it that are pretty persistent, and then you end up with them in your lawn and your what have yous. Yeah. All right, any other questions about compost before we move forward? Yeah.
One thing, if you know anybody with chickens, get chicken poop for your compost bin, but don't add it much past October if you're going to use it in the spring, because it needs about 6 months to
Yeah.
denitrogenize, if
Yes.
you will, because it's just too strong for your plants. It needs to cure.
Yeah,
it's
not
great
all
compost.
manures are created equal. I think is probably the ultimate thing to know, right, is that both for the nutrient content, bird manure of any kind has a really high nitrogen content. That little white bit that's on the top of most bird poo is like straight urea, which is essentially just like as nitrogenous as it can get, enough that it'll burn even you and it'll burn your plants pretty bad. But birds and pigs carry zoonotic diseases. So that's another real good reason to compost their manure before you put it on your food crops, right? Goats, rabbits, cows, a little bit different. Usually you do want to give that still, you know, the standard is like 60 to 90 days. But they don't carry diseases that transfer between us, right? Pigs and chickens carry diseases that humans share with them. So you got to be a little more careful about not using those things, particularly on foods you're going to eat raw in particular. Yeah. All right. Yeah, in the back.
What if you don't have compost pile and you're buying compost from,
Sure.
you know, from the store.
Uh,
Are
compost-
those live? I mean, do they-
Yeah, absolutely, right, because they're not pasteurized.
Okay.
So that sort of thing, perfectly reasonable when it's on a shelf and shelf stable. And I feel like even that, you can open the bag and it's still like steaming, you know, and it'll smell really good. So yes, that is still an actively alive entity. Whereas again, something that's been shelf stabilized, they have to kill it, right? Or again, the bottle's gonna explode. So it's not the same thing. Again, there's nutrients in it, it's not the same thing. Okay, so let's just jump into nutrients just a little bit because they are important via soils and it's always important to know. But you know, in fertilizer bags, there's always those 3 numbers. Those numbers are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. They always go in that order, N, P, K, right? Nitrogen's the thing that's going to make your plants get big and green. Phosphorus is your bloom and grow. Potassium is general health. So like if you look at a Miracle Grow bag, it's usually something like 40-0-0. If you give Miracle Grow to like a tomato plant or something, that tomato plant is going to get so big and so green and never make a fruit. Like just massive, right? But they're never ever going to actually set blooms or fruits. So you have to get those balanced. Bloom and grow fertilizer is the same thing, right? It's like it's going to have a tiny first number, big middle number, reasonably sized second number. So you got to pay attention to what those are. And ultimately, that is what you're looking for in your soil too. So who here has done a soil test before? Sweet, about half. Okay, so this is a soil test box. They are so user-friendly. Like of all the things the government does that is not user-friendly, this isn't one of them. It's so user-friendly, right? It's got all these great instructions on it. I would encourage you to fill out the writing before you fill the box, because I have definitely done that several times. And suddenly I've got this box where I'm like trying to write down what I've done. These are free in North Carolina during the winter months. So I think it's from, maybe Isaac, you could help. I think it's
free during the summer.
Free during the summer.
$4 in the winter.
Nice. So still
Thanksgiving to
reasonable.
April.
Perfect. Say again. I'm sorry. I was over talking.
Thanksgiving to April.
Perfect.
And it's $4.
Nice. And then after that, it's free. So, I mean, you have to pay the shipping, but you get some data back for these. So, the other thing, big thing to know about soil sampling is, one, you can't just take soil off the surface. That's not where plant roots are, right? You need to go down at least 10 inches. Anywhere from 10 to 18 is ideal, right? Depending on what you're growing. If it's trees, you got to go deeper. But for all of us that are on average growing sort of perennials, gardens, veggies, whatever, 12 to 18 inches down, you got to dig a hole. And you also need to get a representative sample. So let's say that my garden is the size of this side of the library. I need to go and take 10 to 12 samples around this whole area, mix them together in a bowl, and then take a representative sample from that bowl that fills this box. Because if I just take one single sample from right here, there's a lot of stuff going on, right? Who knows, maybe right there, like somebody crushed a rock, and now you're just gonna get this weird sample that shows you've got some sort of high pH or low pH or something weird going on. So you gotta get a representative sample, and you need to not use metal tools. If you have really nice stainless steel, maybe, but if you're using a tool that has any kind of rust on it, it's gonna completely sway what nutrients and iron looks like in your soil. Right, so you got to be careful about what you use. It really should be glass, maybe stainless steel. You can use some plastics, but you got to make sure it's clean and have anything else in it, right? Because they're testing for micronutrients, like they're looking at teeny tiny stuff. Make your representative sample, put it in here, send it off, and then when you get your soil test back, know that even I, as a person who has been in this industry for like 20 years now, still have to Google stuff to remind myself what the heck that number means, right? It is written in very sciencey jargon, and it also gives you these ranges with no explanation, right? So it's going to say your nitrogen is at this percentage. Well, is that good or bad or like what exactly? It's great data to have. And it's telling you a lot about your soils, right? It's telling you just how dense they are, how many nutrients you have. They'll give you recommendations on like lime you should add, all kinds of stuff. So it's really nice to have, again, fairly easy to do and free part of the month. So I would encourage everybody to do soil samples. I don't know, I do them on my own farm about every 5 years. Like after I've done the first one and gotten it, after that I don't need to do them every single year unless I'm actively trying to alter my soil. And then I want to see what's happening every single year. Organic matter is a big one. We have amazing soils for physical properties here, right? They drain well, but they also hold soil well. They have this, they have that. It's a great thing, but They also have eroded for a long time. We have these really ancient mountain soils, and so you will be forever adding organic matter. The ideal organic matter is about 5%. Most of our soils, when they come back, are like 1 to 2, right? So cover crops, compost, all this stuff, you're just gonna be forever up here shoving organic matter into your soil. You're never gonna stop doing that. As long as you're a gardener, that will be one of the things you're doing for soils here, right? It's just a fact. Any questions about any of that? Awesome. Okay, let's see if I'm forgetting anything on those bits real quick. All right, so next while we're talking about that, we'll jump a little bit into cover crops. Who here has ever experimented or played with cover crops very much? All right, a few. So a cover crop can be essentially anything that's not your primary, right? So sunflowers can be a cover crop. There are some things that are usually used as cover crops: alfalfas, clovers, rye, buckwheat, that kind of thing. But again, almost anything can be a cover crop. And even in your regular ornamental beds, cover crops can have a place, because in nature, the only reason there's ever bare soil is some sort of upheaval, right? Bare soil is not usually a good thing. It erodes away fast. We have lots of rains, and as weird as it seems, rain is heavy enough and hits the ground hard enough that it compacts soils if there's nothing on it. So at least mulch needs to be on your soil. Bare soil is not a good thing, right? Again, the only reason there's ever bare soil is if like a tree falls over or something catches on fire or whatever, and then nature fixes it as quickly as possible. So if you're doing veggie gardens in particular, when you pull out the crop you're growing in the fall or at the end of the spring, if you're doing spring crops, you should be putting on a cover crop almost right away, if not doing some sort of intercropping, right? And that will lead us essentially into our clay soils. So I wish that there were some easy answer, and there is not, right? If you have clay soils, and around here the most likely reason you have clay soils is because you are on new construction. We don't actually have a lot of like naturally existing clay soils except right on rivers, which you wouldn't necessarily be growing on anyway. We're talking about like heavily compacted construction soils, right? And essentially the only way to fix that kind of soil is to add organic matter to it, right? And you will be doing that for years. That's not something you're going to fix overnight. There is not a magical solution. Sometimes people say to add sand. That is not what you should do, right? If you mix sand with heavy clay, what you make is adobe, and then it turns into concrete. Yeah. So don't do that. I know it seems like they should be opposite, right? That like sand's the big particle and clay is the small particle, and adding sand should make it drain better. But if you do that, all you're making is concrete, right? You are not fixing that problem. There's no way you could add enough sand to actually alter the soil to that degree. I mean, maybe if you had a soil profile that big, fine, but like if you're talking about even a half-acre lot where you're trying to take construction soil to soil that you can grow stuff on, that just isn't going to do it, right? It is adding organic matter that is going to slowly rot into the ground. Microorganisms are going to be aerating that, and they are going to be adding oxygen and mix things to that clay soil. Like that is what you have to do. Is anybody familiar with Gene Logsdon, the author? He got pretty famous for writing this book called Holy Shit, Saving Humanity from Managing Manure. But he wrote lots and lots of books, right? This one is pretty good. We do learn out of this one in our soils class, but he's got a couple of, let's see if I can find the one I was going to read to you all just a little bit. He has one that's about making topsoil out of subsoil, right? Which is like, subsoil is the stuff they dig up to make construction sites out of. So what he has to say is, if there is going to be a lawn, put down sod if you can forage it. If not, sow white clover and bluegrass and pray a lot. Yeah, right? It is not something that's easy to do. If you want to have veggie gardens as opposed to lawn, then sow rye instead of lawn in the fall, plow under the next spring. Plant soybeans and plow them under in July, follow with buckwheat. Plow the buckwheat under or mow with a rotary tiller. Plant rye in the fall again, plow that under in the spring, then make a garden and hope for the best. Yeah, right, I'm serious. I wish that there was some easy answer to this, and there is not. It is not an easy thing to do, right? The reason sod works is because sod has been essentially bred for years to roll out like a carpet on, it could grow on this, right? Like its roots don't go down that far. It doesn't really care what's under there so much. But even big trees have trouble punching into the level of compacted soil that, again, construction sites for new builds have created, right? That's the whole point, that you can put massive buildings on it and it doesn't sink. So like it's been designed to not give at all, right? That is the point of it. So you are setting yourself up for a challenge. That's just the truth. There's certain cover crops that are better at essentially tilling than others. So tillage radishes are these daikon radishes that get like this long and that big around, right? So they punch in these big holes in the soil, you let them rot. That allows air, water into there, or microorganisms can get in there, start to dig around, start to aerate your soil a little bit. When you're adding mulch and things on top of clay soils, you can't dig them in very deep. That's going to be your impulse, is to mix them together. But if you get all your organic matter too far into that clay soil, it can't breathe anymore because no oxygen gets through clay and it'll just rot. It makes this weird rotting layer like 2 inches down because it can't breathe again. So all those little things that were going to be chewing up your organic matter are just dead in there, and it's an anaerobic environment, right? So you got to leave it on the surface. You can maybe like punch it with a fork a little and kind of mix that top 2 or 3 inches, and then otherwise you're just adding organic matter over and over and over again until it begins to sustain life, right? That is, I mean, and you can't even amend just single holes. If anybody's ever dug a hole to plant a plant in heavy clay soils, basically what you make is a pottery bowl. Right? Because when you slide your shovel along it, you smooth that down. If you think about clay and a potter, right? They're just like smoothing that clay. And then if you amend that, as soon as whatever your plant is, be it a small plant or a tree, hits the edge of that bowl, they'll try and start to turn downwards, but then they like girdle themselves just like a plant in a pot, right? They will girdle themselves and choke themselves out in the ground because they hit that hard clay wall and they're like, no, I don't want anything to do with that. I don't want to grow in there. It's too tough. Yeah, no, thank you. So you can't even do that, right? You can't be like, oh, well, I'm going to amend this one little spot where I'm putting this plant, because, I mean, it might live 2 or 3 years, but by year 3, 4, 5, it's just going to start to fail just a little bit. So you spend all this time and energy putting this plant in or getting this tree to this point, and then it's just going to die. Yeah, Nadine.
So you feel that these new communities that don't do much in they have the construction soil, they built the house, they throw some sod on, they plant trees. Say a 3-year-old tree is sitting in a pot of clay?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, actually, Steve Pettis, who is our county extension agent, he will do some pretty good talks on like the fate of trees eventually, right? That they are continuing to fight for it. They are big, so they can fight for longer. But there's also some pictures you can look up of cross sections they've done down in soil where their roots are essentially going up and out and out and out and out, but they're only like that far below the surface. So every time they get hit with a mower, every time something gets wide, they're not going down the 40 feet that they might go down given their ideal growing habitat, right? That being said, Julia, you might have to log back in, I guess. I pulled up a couple of websites. There are some plants that thrive on clay soils, right? Like, there are naturally occurring clay soils, and there are plants that then do okay on them. So, if you're not adamant about these certain plants that don't do clay soils, then focus on the ones that'll be okay, right? Grasses in particular, grasses are just really good at clay soils. They are tough as all get out, right? They usually can survive for extended periods of time. Sedums, autumn joy sedum, that usually you'll be able to tough it out in a clay soil, so you can start with those. So on the right here, I just pulled up a couple, if anybody has ever been on the spruce, pretty surface level info, but I say it's a great place to start, right? If you're looking for just beginnings of bits, I do, and this website's a great place to start with that. So, y'all can wipe down this website, or if you just Google clay soil plants, the spruce, it's going to pull up this exact thing as the top search when I found it on this computer as opposed to the one I have on mine. And there are some ones that, I mean, 25 is a pretty solid list, right? It's not like they're telling you just 2 things. So, like I said, some grasses. Grasses tend to do great in clay soils. Hey, a black-eyed Susan, those are even native to our area and beautiful. Especially the horticultural varieties now, those things are very tough, right? They can handle a fair amount. I love blazing stars, so do our butterfly weed, if you're supporting the pollinators, obviously this is what the monarchs need. So, you have a few lists. Better Homes and Gardens has this little gem right here, which is an actual little garden plan, if you want to download it, that is like what to put in your garden right now if you have clay soils and you want garden stuff immediately. As you can see though, if what you want to grow is veggies and stuff, that is not what they're showing you, right? Veggies in general don't really like clay soils. It's mostly ornamentals. You can find a few veggies that are going to like that, but again, you mostly need to focus on cover crops. If that's what your ultimate goal is to grow vegetable crops, you're looking at, I don't know, amending your soil and working on it for a year to 2 years, minimum. That is just a fact. I mean, we have a section up at our greenhouse right now that got compacted a little bit because it was a high tunnel, so people were walking on it. And then it got overrun by the ragweed. So there was ragweed that you like couldn't see through for a while. And we have done a few things. Right now it's being solarized, right? So we've got a big tarp over it that's hopefully going to cook all that stuff all season long. We're going to plant a cover crop in the fall. We're going to till that under in the spring. We're probably going to do another cover crop next spring. And then maybe next fall will be the first time we do like, I don't know, some kale or lettuce or something else that's fairly easy. So there's a long-term plan, right, for this one little section that's in our soils. So just know if you have clay soil and you feel frustrated by that, you are not alone, and it isn't an easy thing, right? It does take time, and it does take a certain amount of planning and energy, and them's the breaks, right? All right, any questions about that? Yeah, Rob.
Just one thing that I learned was that the clay soils, just to give you a reason to put up with it, is they're full of nutrients.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Full of
Yeah.
nutrients, just difficult to penetrate.
Yeah, they cling to nutrients like crazy, right? They tend to have a little bit of a negative charge, if we're talking about chemistry, which is a huge part of soils. I minored in chemistry partially because of that as a horticulturalist. Like you have to know a lot of chemistry. And almost all of the nutrients that plants need are slightly positively charged. Calcium, magnesium, nitrogen, all of them are a little bit positive. So they stick to each other like, magnets. So like all those nutrients that get thrown in clay soils, they don't leach out and go away. They cling onto that soil. It's just hard to get your plant roots to it. But otherwise it's just sitting there waiting to feed your plants. If you can just add enough organic matter to make it usable. Yeah. Yeah.
So as far as planting trees, like
Sure.
your example, any help? I mean, you gotta build your hole that much bigger and put all organic, matter in there. And
Yeah, I mean, if you really like trees is the thing you want, right? You just really want them to be in the ground. What I would say is doing some like really heavy aerating is like digging pretty deep holes and then backfilling those with as much organic matter as sand. Don't put in trees right away, right? And then what you're hoping is all of that is going to start to loosen up that soil for you in a year or 2 years again. If you can dig down and that hole is looking relatively loose enough, right? It's not, again, making that slick side when you dig into it, then, yeah. Some oak trees, I feel like, I don't know, and Isaac, you might have some things if y'all ever try to plant trees in clay soils, but.
Yeah, I mean, we have some publications in the office of this, the native trees.
Sure.
But, yeah, I mean, in terms of just like you said, the bulb, if you're in that place, so we just gotta worry about that bulb.
That bowl, that darn bowl. I know even when I plant plants in a regular soil, I rough up the edge, right? I take my shovel or tine or whatever I'm using and I at least rough up some of it so again it doesn't make that slick side that's essentially again making a pottery bowl. But again, that's a tough one. I mean, you're gonna need to focus on tough trees at first, which is, that you can kind of look up. I mean, but the maples, oaks, those are gonna be the ones that are like really fierce, right? They're gonna get out there, they are gonna do their best to punch through, and then you can follow them, because all of those things that dig through and rot, and they're making channels through all of that heavy clay. Worms do some of it, but even worms are kind of like, there's nothing to eat in there, out. Yeah, right? Like they don't eat clay, they eat rotting matter and leaves and stuff, right? So if it's just nothing but clay, they too are like, no, not interested really.
so something like the North Carolina hydrangea, they're doing the same thing, even though they might be in a lot of, they're just
Yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah, maybe you do have a plant, again, where its root mass is only getting this big, I mean, that's not super common, but like they're happy enough, right? And fine, yeah, yeah. If it's brand new construction though, I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever moved into some brand new construction and had whatever the like landscaping company is throw in basically some boxwoods and an andina or whatever. But those landscapes don't last very long, right? And just as a landscaper who has come in after the fact, it's like, why is this half of my andina dying? Well, because that half was the one closest to the pottery bowl. So that's the one where the roots are rotting, and this side is still okay because those still have a little bit of space to grow, right? Or why is this part of this dying? Well, that's the one that's hitting the concrete edge, right? So as somebody that comes in 2 years later, that's usually when you start to see everything collapsing, right? Because they can make it just long enough where it's like, oh, yay, look at my new pretty landscape. And then they start hitting those problems and those edges, and then they start dying. Yeah, yeah. If you're lucky, though, and I will say, for that matter, if you have that happen, don't rip the whole plant out of the ground. Cut it off at the soil line and let those roots rot in place. Right? Because again, that's what you want to have happen. Is like if they, as much headway as they may have made, don't ruin that by ripping them out of the ground. Right? Cut them off at the base, let their roots rot in place, plant something small on top. Right? And let them continue to do as much as they've managed to do. Because it's like, you know, we're trying to win the war here. If we lost the battle, we're still fighting the war.
It's the hardest soil I've ever dealt with in the United States.
Hands down. Yeah, absolutely. It is. It's clay soils are the hardest ones. I mean, other than completely waterlogged soils or something like Florida or Louisiana, but that's a whole other thing. Yeah.
So would it help to like pitchfork around that, or would that damage the
Yes,
roots? Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
So if you already have plantings in place, you know your soil is compacted, before you add organic matter, yes, take a big tine fork and like
break it up
a little bit. You can find videos of aerators on YouTube, if you go on YouTube just to see how they work. They're these huge tined things. Some of them pull a core out. If you've ever been on a lawn, a corer one sticks these empty tubes into the ground and then pulls out a whole piece of soil and kind of tosses it out of the way. And then usually they'll come and backfill that with sand. But then there's these ones that are essentially just a giant fork. And they like and go all the way along and punch these giant holes in things. You can do the same thing by hand. Right?
Use a broad fork?
Yeah, broad fork's great. If anybody's never seen a broad fork, it's this big thing that has handles up to here, and you drop it in the ground, and then you sort of like rock it backwards toward you, and it's sort of a hand tiller. Yeah, Julie.
I just want to make a plug for the Asheville Tool Library. They probably have all of these things.
Oh,
for
really?
Rent. And it's $50 to join for the year.
Where do you do this
Where
at?
is that?
Asheville Tool Library, so it's, you know, it's a little field trip, but it's, you know, for a tool that you don't need to have forever and always, it's a really great option.
Yeah.
Especially for even some of the bigger
Asheville.
things. Asheville Tool
Yeah,
Library.
Asheville Tool Library. Yeah. Yeah.
So that may be something that we could do in Hendersonville.
I mean, yeah.
We've tossed it
Yeah,
around a
good
little.
idea.
One guy. It started with one guy.
Cafe.
What's your name?
Yeah.
Lori.
Okay, we're contacting you.
Yeah, right.
Well, we have the medical
Just
closet. We
A
could just-
warning about turning your
outside.
soil, especially a
That's a
clay
great
soil.
idea.
If you bring the clay up to the top and then let it dry, it's hard as a rock.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you basically gotta take something and bust it. in order to-
Yeah, and there's this weird magic moment with clay soils where they're not quite dry but not quite wet, where they will break up. But if you miss that moment, then yeah, like you have rocks or you have like sludge that when you put your hand into it, it kind of sticks to your hand and then you're just ruining it even more. And again, it's tough to work with. If anybody is struggling, again, I feel like you should reassure yourself that it's not like it's just you out there not doing a good job, right? It is really challenging. Which is why so many of those people that do move into new developments and happen to like plants are like, dang it. Like, why won't anything I do actually live or flourish? You know, or again, like something that's supposed to be this tall gets this tall. They have these pygmy forests in California mostly. Has anybody ever heard of those? They're these really cool forests that like, again, are about this tall, but the trees are like 400 years old because they are on this hard pan. So essentially they're like a self-stunted bonsai, sort of. So again, that's what's happening to your plants too. They hit these edges and then they just never get to their full fruition, right? They're like, no, this is as much as I get, so I'm only gonna get this big. Or maybe they just don't ever flower, right? Because again, they're not getting what they need, so they're like, well, I'm alive, but I'm not gonna put out flowers, because that is physiologically very stressful for plants. So, in their decision-making process, they're like, no, 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 we're not putting out flowers or anything, because we're holding on here, and we're not getting any bigger, and we're not gonna do anything else, because otherwise we're gonna grow ourselves to death, right? Yeah.
So I want to back up to your compost stuff where you can get it. You said Danny's Mulch Yard and Kason Building Supply.
So it's Head's Mulch Yard and Danny's Dumpsters.
All right, hold on. Heads.
Mulch Yard and Danny's Dumpsters.
And do you know the cost of that?
It kind of changes. I mean, like anything, I feel like that's a perishable product, but it's usually going to be anywhere from like $30 to $35 per square yard. Yeah, Zach.
Head's mulch yard, depending on what you get, sometimes he has old mulch that he just doesn't want.
What's the name of it?
Heads.
Yeah,
Like
it's
we all
over
have
by,
heads.
it's over by Upward Elementary School.
Yeah.
But sometimes he has piles of mulch that he's just trying to get rid of, and he'll give a good rate per yard on it.
Yeah. Yeah, they're really easy to work with. That's where we get some of the mulch we use for potted plants at the greenhouse, right? Or anything I start garden beds with, their double ground hardwood is beautiful stuff. Yeah, it's really nice mulch. Let's see. I feel like I've said everything I have written down right here. The last little bits I have just to mention. If you feel like going in depth into soils, this is the book we use in our soils class here. So we use this one because while there is some practical information, it does go into some of the more like sciencey sides of things, right? So these are the two, if you want to do some outside reading, some out of class reading, these are the two that I would recommend. And if you really want to get into this stuff, this is the Soil GIS website created by the USDA. So this is a soil survey across the entire United States, right? If you click on this little green button, it's going to bring you to this website. Oops, my session is timed out. You can, I'm not necessarily going to dive into this because this is fairly time consuming to find what you want to find. But if you, let's see, maybe I can at least search. What's our campus? 180 West Campus Drive.
Flat Rock.
Oh yeah, Flat Rock. Okay, so then you have to create, for anybody who's never played with GIS, this is not user-friendly, right? Like, this is gonna end up giving you some good data, but not user-friendly, right? If you're gonna dive into this website, and we cover this in class, because it takes a minute, but
What was
you.
the main address?
Say again?
What's the main address?
Here?
Yeah,
180.
on the site.
Another website.
Oh, so Web Soil Survey nrcs.usda.gov. If you search Web Soil Survey US, this again is almost the top search item. So again, this is what the main one looks like. It gives you all kinds of other stuff. If you click the green button, that's what takes you to this main one. And then let's just say that, so AOI stands for Area of Interest. So you make these little boxes. If you want a perfectly square one, you can use a perfectly square. If I want it to be a atypical shape, I would use that one. But essentially what I do is, gosh, these types of laptops. So it's now created my AOI, Area of Interest. This is where I'm basically asking for it to give me soils data on. I'm saying this square. Then, let's see, down here. They must have moved the button where it's going to give me the actual, oh, there's part of it. So you can download this too, but see how all those have different little squares on them?
Yeah.
All of these, link to a different type of soil, right? There are all kinds of different soils. So that one right here has Hayesville loam on a 2.2 to 7% slope.
And where has all that data come from?
Yeah.
All
You've never
sorts of
done
soil
soils.
surveys that have been done for
Around
years.
Okay.
Years, right? That has not been done in the last 5 years. They've been doing this for like the last 200 years or something.
Like what?
Yeah.
Nobody's ever done a soil survey at my house.
They did at some point. They did at some point. Some USDA person at some
Oh,
point
okay.
did this, and some of it now they can do from
It's
satellite.
like Google Maps, except
Yeah.
they're
Yeah, except they're underground, right? So if you then click on some of these, what it's gonna give you is information about that soil type, right? What is its composition in terms of clay, silt, organic matter, sand, all of that. So you're gonna get some basic data. Really fancy big farms that have equipment that's hooked to GIS have these kinds of tractors that'll go along, and when it hits this barrier, it'll change the kind of fertilizer it's putting out. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Some tractors even self-drive now, right? And are just like going along and then they change stuff or like change how something's planted based on when they, it's crazy the amount of tech that's involved in ag these days. But you can get some fun data from this yourself. I have one for my property. Interestingly enough, I have like an endangered soil type on my property. Because I live on the Green River itself, like my property borders the Green River, and all of those places are having houses built on them. So these beautiful soil types are slowly being lost because they put houses on them. And so like my soil type is like a fun soil type, right? So if you're into data, this is a fun website, right? Again, it's a little clunky and you gotta dig around on it and sort of like get comfortable with using it. But once you do, you get some cool stuff out of this one, right? So this combined with this is gonna be the most data heavy stuff that you will get sort of from out there, right? That's giving you this information on your soil. Other than that, the best way to even like see what's happening in your soil is to go fiddle with it, right? Dig holes through it. What weeds do you get? Your weeds are wildly indicative of what's happening in your soil because only certain weeds grow in certain settings, right? Like I have an underground stream on my property. There's just like, you can see it almost perfectly where all of the weeds that like wet are growing right there. That's where the rushes are. That's where the yellow dock is. That's where all these other things that are just like, yay, wet soil, we love this. That's where we are, right? Compacted soils get certain types of weeds. And if you're the kind of person that wants to let weeds do their job, which is one, to hold soils in place. So many of our weeds around here are edible and or medicinal, right? So you don't necessarily need to be getting rid of those weeds, right? Let them tell you what they have to tell you. Let them to continue to work with your soils and let them be a partner with you as you go along and receive the information that they're giving you that's not sciencey data. Personally, I want both, right? That tends to be me. I straddle both lines. I want the science and I want the nature stuff that's just coming to me naturally. Okay, that is everything I had just already planned. So now I know we've been taking questions as we go along, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody else has. Yeah.
I have kind of a weird situation. I'm right on Mud Creek.
Oh, yeah.
It jumps its banks.
Of course it does.
periodically.
Yeah.
And you get this white, it's like a silt. It's pure white. It looks like beach sand.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to get grass to reestablish or anything down in that field. I mean, is there, short of plowing the whole thing under and replanting, I mean, is there anything that I can sow to hold the soil in place?
I mean, yes, there's certainly cover crops that you can put there. What ultimately do you want to have happen in that spot?
Well, it's just a field.
Just a field,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, most of your average grasses are going to be able to overcome that eventually, right? So I would say continue to seed native grass mixes as much as possible. Some of it, I mean, like, if you're talking about having the right equipment, there are these kind of big rake tines that you can drive over it. It basically sifts the sand into the grass. That's what you would do if you had that equipment, right? Because you just want it to go under there. And if anything, it's just like self-amending your soil, which is what floodplains do. That's why floodplains are so great, because they're always adding that stuff when they flood. But I agree, like when it sits on top, it's going to kill it. So somehow you got to get it to sift down through there.
Yeah, we've been hand raking it. For 3 acres, that's a lot.
That's a lot of hand raking. Yeah. Do you have like a drivable tractor or anything?
Riding lawnmower.
So see if there's an attachment. Like if it's something you really want to have happen every time that happens at Mud Creek, they're not gonna fix that anytime soon. I know they're actively trying to, but that's gonna continue to flood over and over. So they might have an attachment for your riding mower that's essentially a tined little fork, right? And then you can just sift it in off your riding mower.
What kind of cover crop would go in that? I mean, clover or?
Yeah, clover would be a great one. Alfalfa counts as a clover, so your pollinators are gonna love that.
Are these native grasses?
No, I don't think there's any cover crops that we would consider native. No. They're not gonna be harmful, though. None of our, maybe alfalfa is gonna jump its borders a little bit, just because it's pretty hardy, but none of them are considered invasive. They're just non-native, right? Yeah. We're doing crimson clover at the greenhouse, and that one is fun, right? Because it's gonna bloom in about a month, maybe, and it makes those beautiful flowers. Yeah, I know, ours is maybe mid-shin high right now.
Wow.
And so, if you can do crimson clover, that one is fun. Yeah, that one's a really cool one.
You buy that online?
Yeah, you can, or some of our feed stores sell it.
Oh.
I will say though, pure crimson clover seed is not cheap. We planted the strips we could get at ours, and we are planning on collecting seed from it this year to triple how much seed we have, and then we're gonna start cover cropping every single space we have with that stuff, continue to save seed. But it's a pretty nice one in that, at least for us, when we do it in veggie patches, we let it go to seed, we collect as much as we can, and then we mow it down, either add it to compost piles or mix it in place if we're not growing something right away in that spot. And then it comes up on its own from the seed that drops in late September? And by then we're almost done anyway, so we just let it come in. It's like it balances with our veggie crops just right. So we just let it come up almost as an intercrop. And then as soon as the veggies come out, the crimson clover is just there all winter long, sort of being all tiny. And then as soon as spring gets here, it's like, shoots up. Yeah.
When you, two questions. When you originally planted the crimson clover, was it on tilled soil or just on surface soil?
It was on tilled soil.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other question I had was with seed starting mix. Do you have a source for that? Because it's different than just planter. Just planter soil.
Yeah, so the biggest difference with seed starting mix is it's finer. Right, it'll be called seed starting or propagation mix or something. That's really the biggest difference, right? So if you can't find seed starting mix, just sift what you already have. Because our regular potting mix has pretty big chunks of bark and things. And what'll happen is if a chunk of bark happens to be in the way, the little baby seedling can't get up.
Right.
And it just makes too big of air spaces for those teeny tiny little root hairs. So if you just sift it, then you take all those bigger chunks and put it in your compost pile, and what you end up with is a fine mix.
Would you want to put a little bit of perlite in it too?
We don't use perlite as much anymore in our greenhouse anyway, partially because, I don't know, I don't like the dust it makes. That's almost a personal thing. I breathed it in a couple of times. I'm like, oh, my sweet moms. Oh my gosh. We will mix in a little bit of sand. It's cheaper.
Yeah.
Right, it's a little bit more environmentally friendly as well. The thing we do still get on the regular, especially for tiny seeds, is vermiculite. And we'll put a thin layer of vermiculite on the top, which we find helps us a lot with mold growth or algae growth. I don't know about y'all, but especially when you have seeds that are long term, I'll start to get that green fuzz across the top. And vermiculite, I find, and our students, that's what we do. It helps a lot. Yeah. Yeah. And real fine seeds, if you're growing, I don't know, poppies or snapdragons or something that have seeds that look like dust, that you don't bury those seeds, right? You kind of just spread them across the surface. But you need them to still be making contact. And just, again, a light dusting of vermiculite across the top, just helps with soil contact, but doesn't bury them so that they don't germinate. Yeah. Maybe on that note, what I'll say, I know Rob mentioned a little bit about not tilling. Part of the reason that no-till can be helpful, even if it's not 100% no-till, seeds can last in the seed bed for conceivably ever. My alma mater, Auburn, is still doing this weed seed project where I think they started 80 years ago, and they've been passing it along in this lab where they buried all these jars of seeds and they dig them up once a year. All of them are still germinating. Right, so it's there's a seed bed under there. Every time you turn soil over, you just bring up a whole new set of seeds that are sunlight, right? So every now and then, there are some absolutely genuine and legitimate reasons to till. right? There's reasons you would do that. If you don't have to, and you can not turn your soil over, that can be to your benefit, right? Because you're not bringing weed seed up. Just know that every time you till, you are going to be presented with a weed problem. So just be prepared to handle that, right? Again, there's some legitimate reasons to do it. Just know what you're about to face, right? Yeah, Rob.
Yeah, with regard to that, in terms of cover crops, you gotta be careful what you plant as cover crops.
Sure.
Because if it's a grass, chances are you're gonna have to till.
Perennial rye.
Otherwise, it'll keep coming back up.
Yeah, if you plant perennial rye in particular and you let it go to seed, you will have perennial rye weed seeds in your garden forever. Annual rye is a little bit easier to manage, but cover crops have to be planned into your plan just like anything else, because you do need them to stop and start at specific times for all sorts of reasons, right? Buckwheat's the one we use in summer because it happens super fast, comes up to flower, and you can get it out of the way before it sets seed, right? So cover crops also take some amount of research. And I am happy and available to answer any of the questions you have outside of this meeting. I'm very easy to find. If you send an email to Horticulture in Blue Ridge, you will get me, blueridge.edu. I'm happy to help you figure that out, answer any questions you might have. There's a lot of info out there, right, about these kind of things, because cover crops have really become the norm, right? I think 20 years ago, they were still kind of this like, oh, just the organic farmers are doing that over there. Now, conventional farming, everybody does it, because it makes a massive difference in terms of control of weeds, not using as many pesticides, building up your soil profile, having more pollinators, having more predator insects, which means you don't have to spray the bad guy insects. Just like, there are so many reasons to do it. And the big farms a lot of times are like mowing them down and then using these drill plugs to put their money crop right into the stubble. So again, they're not even tilling. It's like they're cutting down a cover crop, they're putting something straight into it, and then the money crop comes up, because even they, like, whether they're doing it for environmental reasons or not, they don't have to spend as much money or time controlling these things that otherwise have been done with chemicals, time, machines, all that kind of thing, right? So cover crops are a really powerful tool for all sorts of reasons, and there's a bunch of them. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, right over here.
Not a question, but a resource. So NC State has something called the Plant Toolbox. So if you're looking to identify plants for certain areas, you can check the Plant Toolbox, and it will help you locate plants that you want to look at.
Excellent.
Or consider.
Yeah. NC State is an amazing resource for so many plant-specific things. We're lucky to have, and Clemson. We have two amazing plant institutions right here next to us, which is nice, because they also publish all kinds of stuff about our area, which is nice. Yeah. Yeah, right back
So
here.
for a cover crop for raised beds,
I mean, I would definitely still cover crop raised beds, right? Because there's seed floating around in the fall. Every ragweed around us is like, just sending out 12 billion seeds. It kind of depends, right? If you're going to do winter crops, then I would say like clover or something that's going to stay tiny all winter, because essentially those winter ones are putting on roots all winter and then they shoot up in the spring. If you're going to pull out your bed and it's just a summer bed, then you can start to look at things like winter rye, peas, brassicas, that kind of thing. And most of the time cover crops are done as a mix. Sometimes they're a single species, but honestly one of my favorites is a grass, a legume, and a brassica. If I can somehow incorporate all three of those, I'm getting a lots of things all at one time, right? Root growth, nitrogen fixation, brassicas help slow down the bad guys in your soil while feeding the good guys. So if you can do those three in a blend, that's a great blend. Yeah, right over here.
If you like spinach, plant spinach as
Yeah.
a cover crop.
Yeah.
It'll kind of sit there all winter, covering the soil.
Yeah.
And then in the spring, it'll start to grow, and you'll be eating fresh spinach before anybody else is.
Yeah, absolutely. Cover crop. I mean, again, cover crop is just a crop that's covering the soil. It doesn't have to be something that's not what you're using, right? Yeah.
I got the little purple flowers coming up all throughout my lawn. What does that say about my soil?
Okay, so it depends on which purple flower you're talking about, right? They look like a little face,
Yes, and some of them are
or
white,
like a teeny tiny snapdragon.
little snapdragons.
Teeny tiny snapdragon.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are usually Labiaceae, which are in the sort of mint family. What that generally indicates is you have relatively healthy soil that's fairly compacted.
that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Do you want them?
Yeah.
You're okay with them?
Yeah, they're fine.
Pollinators probably like
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
I mean, I tend to be very sympathetic to the weeds, right? Like, if, you know, in a place where they're not allowed, fine, I've got all sorts of methods to get rid of them, but like in my own yard, please give me all of those. I like violets and all the little chickweeds and all the little bits and pieces, the dandelions and the sorrels that are tasty, you know, they're yellow and they taste like lemon and and I like sour flavors. So, I mean, personally in my lawn, all weeds are welcome, right? I mean, like I still mow, but I mow at a high level. Yeah, so like, you know, I'm mowing at this height. So I have walking areas because I want to be able to walk in certain areas. I have 14 acres, so like there's a zone, right, of mowing. But even that, I want them right there. Like I'm not trying to cut those down, and I eat them, quite frankly. Yeah, because they're yummy. And I don't know, I just feel like I personally get a lot of benefit from a certain level of biophilia, you know, and like eating the things in my environment, which makes me have fewer allergies and be more resilient to the things in my environment that my body needs to deal with. But that's kind of a different talk. Yeah. Yes. Okay, any other questions? Awesome. Thank you all so much for coming.
Thank
Again, I'm
you so
easy to
much.
find if you have more questions.